DxO PhotoLab is an amazing photo editing software, and Retouch4me is amazing at editing portraits. When you combine the two, you get a workflow that I think is really amazing. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. Take a look at starting with DxO PhotoLab 9, and then transition it into Retouch4me software, and then bring it back from Retouch4me into DxO for polishing touches. Now, if you're interested in picking up either one of these programs, consider using the links in the description box below. Those are affiliate links, which means if you purchase through them, I make a commission. Now, you can save some money using the coupon codes that are located down there as well. I will make note that the coupon code for DxO software is only for new customers. So if you're an existing customer, unfortunately, that coupon code won't work for you. And then the last thing that I'll mention is Retouch4me is going to increase in pricing in February 2026. So if you're still watching this in January of 2026, you have an opportunity to pick it up at the current price. And then you can also save money using the coupon code that's down in the description box below as well. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's jump into the computer and get started with the editing. So here we are inside of DxO PhotoLab 9, and this is the original image, but it also has some edits on it. So let me just hold down the compare button. This is like the before and after. So this is the straight out of camera version of the image. All right. It looks great. I love the way that the A7R4 captured the moment, but with just me uploading the image into DxO PhotoLab, it automatically did this. Now let me show you how it's doing that. So if we come over to PhotoLab 9 and we come down to the settings, when I installed PhotoLab 9, I decided to allow it to add the DxO natural style to all of my raw images. Now, of course, if you have PhotoLab 9 and you're like, Chris, how did you do that? Well, you just come over to the settings and then you can hit this little drop down right here. And you could choose any preset that you've even created. But I like the DxO natural style because it does a great job at just recovering detail and giving me a good starting point. And that's one of the things that I love about using DxO software. It just opens up the image and allows me to see what I wanted to see, or maybe something that was pretty close to what I was seeing on the day when I was capturing it. So that's the first tip, is just having that added in, that preset style. The second thing that I like to do here is tweak this a little bit further. So I know that I like my images to be just a touch more contrasty, and there's a few ways of getting more contrast in a photo. So the first way is I could just pull up on the DxO Clear view over here, which is under the light tab. And I do have this set up in one of the more simplistic views, but I'm not going to go over that. Nonetheless, DxO Clear view, I can just increase or decrease this however I need to. And what that does is it starts to, add local contrast and opens up the image overall. I really enjoy this tool, but a little truly does go a long way. So I usually don't make that go past 30, depending on the image, but 30 is usually like the limit. So 21 is pretty good here. And then of course, if I wanted more contrast, DxO has this contrast section here where you can use the micro and fine contrast and really fine tune. And for those of you who are familiar with On1, this is similar to what dynamic contrast is. And the only, I guess, kind of the downside here is you can't really mask this in. There are some local adjustments, but I digress. I'm only looking at making global adjustments, so I won't spend too much time on that. But I think that this looks pretty good from a contrast perspective. And so then the next thing that I want to work on is the color of my image. And so that's where I'll come over here to this little second icon with the three little circles. This is the color. I leave my color space set to DxO wide gamut, and that just gives me way more color information to work with. And that's the reason why I do it. And so I'll leave my white balance to as shot because I think that that works out just fine. But again, you can change your white balance. You can even use the eye picker if there was something that was more neutral in the photo that you wanted to use. But not overly concerned about that. Where I really have fun using DxO is inside of the color rendering. Now, I will be fair. I also have Film Pack installed, and you're going to see different things based off of the tools that you have available. So definitely pay attention to the fact that I am going to use some things that aren't just a DxO PhotoLab 9 thing. However, inside of here, you can change your camera body, and you do have to have Film Pack installed on your machine in order to get this option. So when I click that, I get this huge list of camera bodies and essentially their color profiles. So this is where I really enjoy working because I don't have to have certain cameras to get that look. Now, I happen to know that the Q343 was the look that I went with on the previous photo that I showed at the beginning. So I'm just going to go with that. And I pull down on the intensity. So I use this kind of like a LUT. And if you're familiar with using LUTs, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, all I do is fade this in until I get to a point where I like it. I'm not worried about the number over here on the right side. I look at the photo, and then I like to turn this off and on just to see if it's giving me that look. This is very subjective. You could choose to use this however you want to, but that's just my personal take on it. Okay. So now that I've gotten the raw image to a point where I think it's ready to move into into Retouch4me. So let's just take a look at, this is what we came into DxO PhotoLab straight out of camera. And this is what we've gotten so far. Now, honestly, you could stop right here, but because I'm working with a portrait and I think Retouch4me has some phenomenal portrait retouching tools, I'm going to use the Retouch4me in order to work on this image. So what you do in order to get this into Retouch4me is you have to export it to an additional file, right? I have to bake in all of the settings that I got out of PhotoLab into an image. So I'm going to click on export, and I have a TIFF export already set up. You can change your export parameters in PhotoLab, but I'm not going to go into that. If you got questions about it, leave it in the comment section below. But what you can see here is I have export as TIFF. I'm going to send a 16-bit, so I have all of the information, or at least as much of the information as I can. The destination is going to be the original folder, the folder that this file is already saved in. And then I just use the suffix _PL9. That just allows me to know that this is the PhotoLab 9 export. Now, because I've already done this, I'm going to change this suffix to PL9 version 2. So just put a V2 at the end. So that way I don't get a duplicate in the folder there. And so everything else, I'm just going to leave alone. These are the default settings that were already in there, and it doesn't really matter for what we're about to do. So I'm going to leave that be, and I'm just going to hit export. And we're going to watch this little export go. You'll see that there's an arrow with a blue indicator showing that the file is being exported. Once that goes away, we'll see that file pop up over here in our film strip view. And so now what I can do is click on that image. This is our edited version with all of our adjustments created or on it. I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to go with show in Finder once I find it, or reveal image in Finder. And so here it is. All right. It's already selected. And this is kind of a workaround just because you can't export directly to your DX or to Retouch4me. And so I'm going to right click on here, and I'm going to go to open with, and then I'm going to come down to Retouch4me arms. Now your list may not be nearly as long as the list that I just had, and that's okay. All right. But just know that that's what you got to do. Right click on the image in the Finder. Now you can see I already had the photo down here, and I want the PhotoLab 9 number 2. And so I'm just going to double click on this to make it go full screen, and we can see the image right here in the middle. So the things that I want to apply to this particular image are definitely going to be the heel. I want to apply dodge and burn. I'm not worried about skin tone because I think I took care of that well enough inside of DxO PhotoLab. So I'm going to skip that. I will apply portrait volumes, and then I'm also going to apply eye brilliance. All right. So those are the only things that I think are necessary for this particular image. Now, of course, you do have to have all of these installed on your computer for this to work. And I do have all of these modules installed locally to my machine, and that's what the arms is. Now, there's another form of Retouch4me that works off of the token system, so you can process in the cloud, but I don't need to do that because I already have these individual purchases made and applied to my computer. So just know that you do have to purchase these individually unless you go with the credit system and then you start using the cloud. So that's enough on that. I'm going to go ahead and click the pre-render. And what this is going to do is you'll notice it's going to change this image over here once that rendering is done. And while it does that, let me get some coffee. All right, so now Retouch4me has completed its actual work, and you can see that all of the ones that I had checked, they turned blue, and that's just telling me that these are included in this render and that it successfully made the adjustment. So if I hold this little eyeball down by clicking and holding, you can see the before and the after. And for me, this is phenomenal because I didn't have to go like super deep dive into retouching this image. I just let Retouch4me do all of the work, all of the heavy lifting, and then I have this. So now what I'm going to do is export this again. So we'll hit export. And again, you could do this over a series of images. So if you have 50 images, you could just run this on all 50 of those images and then come back, export them, and be done, right? So just keep that in mind. I'm only working on a single image today because that's what I feel like doing. But with that being said, I'm going to click on export location, and I'm going to make sure that it's going to the original folder. I don't need a subfolder. And then it's going to say retouched, which is perfectly fine. So it's going to have the name of the file, and then it's going to say retouched. I'm okay with that. And then image resizing, I usually don't have to resize coming out of Retouch4me because most of the files that I'm pulling out of here, I'm putting back into another software like PhotoLab 9. And then I'll go to file settings, and I'll make sure that it stays as a TIFF because I want to keep the best quality that I can coming out of Retouch4me. Now, a caveat here, if you are going to go directly, like this is the last step, you could change this over to JPEG and work with it there. But I need to export it as a TIFF because I still want to do some work over inside of PhotoLab with this image. So I'm going to hit export, and we're going to let Retouch4me do its thing. And once it gets done with the export up here in the top right, then we'll go ahead and close this out and jump back over to PhotoLab 9. All right, so now that this has turned green, we're ready to close this down. And we can jump back over to PhotoLab 9. And you can see our retouched image is sitting right here. And this is the reason why I want to use the original folder that the image was already in, because it keeps the things organized for me. But what's really cool and why I enjoy this workflow is DxO reads my hard drive. So I don't even have to like go and import this into DxO. All I have to do is come over here, and one of these is going to be the retouched one. Should be this one right here. Yep. And I can see the file name up here at the top. Got truncated down here. But fun fact, if you just hover over the image for a little while, DxO brings this little pop-up meta box. And then you can see that towards the top there, I can't really move my mouse over it because if I do, it'll go away. But towards the top of this meta box, you can see where it says name and then PhotoLab 9 version 2 - retouched. That's the one that came out of Retouch4me. So now I want to put final touches on this. All right. And the real final touch here is making her lips a little bit more vibrant, maybe darkening down the background and then brightening her eyes. So very simple stuff, all can be done with the local adjustment. And with the new version of PhotoLab 9, or with PhotoLab 9, what you can do is you can use these AI masks to select the background. So I'm going to do that, and we'll see that cover the background. And then I want this to kind of fade starting at our shoulders going down. So I want it 100% at the top, but then not so much starting from her shoulders. So then what I can do is click this little icon to add a sub mask. And this is where a lot of photo editing software is going today. And I'm going to click on the gradient tool here. One of my favorite types of tools to use in any photo editor. And then I'll just kind of separate this a little bit. And right now I'm not getting the, I guess the outcome that I want. And so what I have to do is come over to the gradient mask, right click on it, and then invert the shape. And that's going to give me the inverse. So now it's just cutting away the background, right? And what I'll do is just drag this up until I get it right where I want it. So about there, that's like shoulder height. And now I can come over to my actual adjustments, pull down on the exposure here, and you can see how that's just darkening the background. Now what's really cool with DxO is if I come down here to the bottom, I have a blur capability. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up on this blur just to help separate her from the background that much more. I've already darkened it, which is good, but if I remove some of that texture from the background by blurring it, then it just helps make her stand out a little bit more in the photo. And I think that that just works out really well. So I'm going to darken it down even more. So right around there looks about right. And so now it's time for another mask. And this one is going to be for the eyes. So I'm going to go back to the AI masking. I'm going to hit the new mask icon so I get a second mask. And for this one, I need to zoom in. And the reason why I need to zoom in is because the tool that I'm going to use, I need to make like a rectangular selection. So if I come over here to this dotted line, it says add an area. And so what I do is just click that, and then I can click and drag a rectangle, and it puts it right over the eye. Now it's not perfect, and you could obviously clean this up. For today's purposes, I'm not going to clean it up all that much, but you can clean it up by simply grabbing a brush and then painting this away. You just set it to minus, and then I'll make it a little bit larger. I'm just going to show this real quick. And then you can see how I paint that away. And so now it's just in the eye. And the inverse to this is if I go with another sub mask, what I could do is just paint this whole thing in with a brush like so. And so this is going to give me the same selection for what I want to do, which is just bring up the exposure on the eyes. And then I'll even give it a little bit of this clear view. We'll open up the shadows, bring down the blacks, and then let's give it some sharpness. Okay. And so they look really overbaked right now because we're zoomed in. So we'll adjust that in a second when we zoom out. But while we're zoomed in, I want to work with her lips. And so we'll just go ahead and create a new mask. And I am going to grab the AI tool, and I'm just going to use the rectangular marquee here to select around here. And that selects just her lips. So now we're good to go. And what I want to do is maybe let's just brighten them up a bit. And then we'll come down to the color, and I already have red selected. So all I need to do here is push the saturation and maybe even the luminance just to make those pop a little bit more. And I'm not going to talk too much about the uniformity slider here, but what you can do is if you want more of an even spread of a color, you can play around with the uniformity slider, and that's very helpful. And then I'll even come over to the global saturation in this local adjustment and push the vibrance just a little bit more to make those lips really pop, right? She was wearing a red lipstick. So it always helps to make sure that that's ready to go. I'm going to go with a Command and 0, and it just zooms me back out. And you could see I overdid the lips while I was zoomed in. And so what I'm going to do is come up here to the top, and where it says AI mask, let's just close that out for a second. And where it says AI mask, I have this opacity slider. I can click on the actual mask as well. And I have this opacity slider, and I can just pull this down. Let me close out the mask again. And then I can just pull down the opacity until it blends decently with the overall image. And then same thing with the eyes. I'll just go ahead and pull down the opacity until it blends with the image. And so now we literally went from a photo that looked like this starting out to an image that looks like this. And it didn't take all that long. It took a little bit longer because I was explaining it, but it doesn't really take all that long. Now, one last thing that you could do, and what I really enjoy working with inside of DxO PhotoLab, is the geometry. So if you come to this little square, you get your cropping tools. And so if I turn on crop and I leave it set to auto, what I can do is click on horizon, and it's going to auto crop and rotate the image for me. So if I needed her to be a little bit more vertical, like instead of leaning back as she is in the image, I can just pull this horizon slider until she gets to the place where I think it makes the most sense for her to be. And it's auto cropping the image to make sure that I don't get like those weird borders around the side. And so that's extremely helpful when you're working with portraiture, because you don't want that. You just want to straighten things out. And, you know, DxO PhotoLab 9 really does just let me get the job done, and I could deliver this image. So hopefully you found some value in the content, and if you did, go ahead and smash the like button and consider subscribing. Now again, if you want to pick up PhotoLab 9 or Retouch4me and save a little bit of money, consider using that coupon code located in the description box below, and I greatly appreciate everyone who supports the channel in that way. Now, if you got questions about either of these programs or just workflows in general, you can leave a comment down below. But if you really want to learn how to use this software, consider signing up for a training call with me. You'll find a link for that in the description box as well. Until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.